The sky outside was a dull gray as Wendy sat across from Elaine's pristine desk, watching her boss flip through the promotion application with practiced indifference. 5 years of sacrificed weekends, missed family dinners, and endless overtime hours condensed into a 20-page portfolio that Elaine barely skimmed before setting it aside. "I appreciate your enthusiasm," Elaine said, adjusting her designer glasses. "But I've reviewed your application thoroughly, and while your work has been solid, I don't believe you're ready for senior management. Perhaps in another year or two." Solid. The word fell between them like a heavy stone. I had maintained the department's highest client satisfaction ratings. I had personally salvaged the Lawford account when everyone else had written it off. I hadn't taken a full weekend off in 3 years. But I only smiled and nodded, the rehearsed expression I'd perfected in corporate life. "I understand. Thank you for the feedback. I'm glad we're on the same page," Elaine replied, already checking her watch. "The Ellison proposal needs your attention today. They've requested additional metrics before signing." As I gathered my things, Elaine was already typing an email, my career disappointment already forgotten. I walked past the corner office that should have been mine, with its window view and glass door where my name belonged. In the parking garage, I sat in my car and studied my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman staring back wasn't sad or angry. She looked calculated. I started the engine and made two decisions that would change everything. I would cancel my upcoming vacation, and I would stop writing my daily operational guides. No one at the office realized it yet, but their perfect system was about to collapse without its invisible support beam. Before I tell you what happened next, you might be wondering why so many people feel trapped in careers where they're undervalued. If my story resonates with you, make sure to like and subscribe. I share a new career strategy every week that could change your professional life. Now, back to what happened after that meeting. My name is Amelia Carlton, and until that meeting, I was the most dependable employee at Meridian Solutions. Not the most visible or the highest paid, but the one who kept everything running while others claimed the credit. I'm methodical by nature, with an almost photographic memory for systems and processes. Growing up with 4 younger siblings taught me to solve problems before they exploded, a skill that transferred perfectly to corporate life. When I joined the company 5 years ago, I'd inherited a catastrophic mess. The previous team leader had left suddenly after a dispute with management, taking all procedural knowledge with them. No documentation, no transition notes, not even passwords to critical systems. The department was in chaos. Clients were threatening to leave, and no one knew how to fix it. I spent 3 months reverse engineering every workflow, staying until midnight decoding spreadsheets and reconstructing client histories. I created detailed guides for every process, color-coded, indexed, and meticulously organized. My boss, Elaine, never bothered to learn these systems. Why would she, when I handled everything so seamlessly? "You're a natural problem solver," she'd say during my performance reviews, always followed by a modest raise that never matched my contributions. The company had recently landed a contract with Ellison Enterprises, a major client worth millions in annual revenue. I'd built that client relationship from the ground up, staying late to accommodate their overseas time zone and immersing myself in every detail of their industry. Elaine had attended exactly 3 meetings, mostly to take credit during quarterly executive reviews. Each morning, I arrived at 7:30 to prepare briefing notes for her before her 9 o'clock management meetings. Each evening, I sent comprehensive updates on all active projects. In between, I put out fires before anyone even noticed the smoke. But the morning after my promotion was denied, something inside me shifted. I arrived at exactly 9 o'clock, not 7:30, not 8:45, exactly 9. I drafted no briefing notes. I responded only to emails directly addressed to me and ignored the rest. When a supplier crisis erupted, I redirected it to the appropriate department instead of fixing it myself as usual. By lunchtime, 3 colleagues had stopped by my desk, puzzled. "Amelia, did you see the thread about the Lafford scheduling conflict?" asked Peter from accounts. "Yes," I replied, continuing to type. He waited for more, shifting awkwardly when nothing came. "So, can you handle it like you usually do?" I looked up from my screen. "That actually falls under procurement," I said, forwarding it to Diane. His eyebrows lifted slightly. "But you always manage these things." "I've been advised to focus on my assigned responsibilities," I said with a faint smile. "I'm trying to demonstrate I understand my proper place in the organization." By 5 p.m., I packed up my things and left. No extra hours, no taking work home. On the drive, I canceled the cabin reservation for my upcoming vacation, the first real break I'd planned in 3 years, because I intended to witness the system's inevitable collapse. That evening, when my phone buzzed with work notifications, I silenced it and spent time with my daughter, Elena, baking chocolate chip cookies, something I hadn't done in months. As we laughed over misshapen dough, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. "Mom, why are you home early?" Elena asked, licking batter from a spoon. I paused, considering how to explain corporate politics to a 10-year-old. "I decided my time is valuable, honey, and I want to spend more of it with you," I said. She beamed. "Can we do this tomorrow too?" "Absolutely," I promised, ignoring the phone vibrating insistently on the counter. By the next morning, cracks were appearing at work. The Ellison client demanded urgent changes to their implementation plan, changes only I knew how to execute. Elaine tried to lead the response team, but quickly became overwhelmed without my usual detailed briefings. "Where are the process notes for the Ellison customizations?" she demanded at 10:30. "They're in the shared drive," I replied pleasantly. "Under client implementations. I mentioned it in last month's department meeting. There are hundreds of files there." "Which one specifically?" I pulled up the folder on my screen. The master document is called Ellison Enterprise Integration Complete Process Documentation. It's organized by module with tabbed sections. Elaine stared at the 200-page file in barely disguised horror. "Can you just handle this directly? The client is waiting." "I'd be happy to," I said, "but I have the quarterly compliance review this afternoon. I can tackle Ellison first thing tomorrow." Her face tightened. "This can't wait until tomorrow." "I understand. Would you like me to reschedule the compliance review? It's due to regulators by end of day." She left without answering, her heels clicking aggressively down the hall. That evening, I turned off all work notifications and took Elena to the park. My personal phone remained silent beside me on the bench as I watched her on the swings, her laughter carrying across the playground. For the first time in years, I was fully present in my personal life. When we returned home, I glanced at my work phone once. 79 missed calls from various company numbers, voicemails ranging from confused to desperate to furious. The Ellison team was threatening to pull their contract. 3 systems had developed unexpected issues, all meticulously documented in my guides, which no one had bothered to read. The quarterly compliance report due to regulators remained incomplete. I set the phone down and slept better than I had in years. The next morning, I arrived at exactly 9 o'clock again. The office atmosphere had transformed overnight. Harried colleagues rushed between meeting rooms. Elaine was visible through her glass office, gesturing frantically on a video call. The regional director's assistant paced by the elevator banks. I settled at my desk and methodically organized my tasks for the day. "Where have you been?" Peter hissed, appearing beside me with wide eyes. "Everything's falling apart. Elaine's been trying to reach you since yesterday afternoon." "I left at 5 o'clock," I replied calmly. "My work hours are 9 to 5, as specified in my contract." "But the Ellison crisis, what about it?" His mouth opened and closed. They're threatening to walk. Nobody can figure out how to implement the changes they need. I nodded thoughtfully. That process requires special handling. It's all documented in the guide I created last year. Nobody can make sense of your documentation without you explaining it, he almost shouted. Before I could respond, Elaine's assistant appeared. Amelia, emergency meeting in the conference room now. I gathered a notebook and pen, walking unhurriedly to the conference room where Elaine sat with the regional director Byron Wallace. Their faces were grim, folders spread across the table. Amelia, Byron said, relief evident in his voice. Thank goodness. We need your help with this Ellison situation. Immediately, I sat down and placed my notebook on the table. Of course. How can I assist? Elaine's face was tight with controlled fury. Let's cut to the chase. What will it take for you to fix this? The promotion. It's yours. I tilted my head slightly. That's a generous offer, but I've been contacted by a competitor. They've offered me a senior management position with a substantial salary increase. Apparently, they believe I'm qualified. The room went silent. Byron's eyes widened while Elaine's narrowed dangerously. You're leaving? Byron asked. When? I haven't accepted their offer yet, I replied. I'm taking time to consider my options. Name your price, Byron said immediately. Whatever they're offering, we'll match it. I smiled politely. It's not just about compensation, it's about recognition, respect, and opportunity. The Ellison client specifically asked for you by name, Elaine interjected. You can't possibly leave now. Interesting, I said. So did 4 others in the past month. I reached into my bag and placed a folder on the table. Here's my 2 weeks' notice. I'll help with the transition as my contract requires. Elaine reached for the folder, but Byron was faster. He opened it, scanned the contents, then closed it decisively. This won't be necessary, he said firmly. Amelia, I'd like to speak with you privately in my office. As I stood to follow him, Elaine remained seated, knuckles white against the polished table. The company's response to my resignation was about to reveal exactly how much they had undervalued me all along and what they were willing to do to keep me, now that they understood my true worth. I followed Byron to his corner office, aware of the curious glances from colleagues as we passed. His space was minimalist but impressive. Awards and industry recognitions lined one wall, while floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. He gestured for me to sit in the chair across from his desk. I've been watching your contributions for some time, Byron said, folding his hands on his desk, though apparently not closely enough. I remained silent, letting him continue. The situation with Elaine concerns me, he admitted. This is the first I'm hearing about your promotion being denied. Why didn't you come to me directly? Chain of command, I replied simply. Elaine is my supervisor. Going over her head would have been inappropriate. He nodded slowly. Admirable, but perhaps misguided in this case. Tell me honestly, what would it take to keep you here? I considered my words carefully. Recognition of my actual contributions, appropriate compensation, and a position where I can implement the strategies I've developed instead of just executing someone else's vision. Byron studied me for a long moment. I'm creating a new position, Director of Operational Systems, reporting directly to me. Double your current salary, full remote flexibility 3 days a week, and authority over departmental workflow design. The position is yours if you want it. I didn't respond immediately, which seemed to surprise him. Is that not sufficient? He asked. It's very generous, I acknowledged, but I need to be clear about something. I'm not using a competing offer as leverage. There really is another company waiting for my decision. Byron leaned back. What can they offer that we can't match or exceed? A fresh start, I said honestly. No history of being overlooked. No colleagues who see me as support staff rather than leadership. Fair point, he conceded. But consider this. You've built systems here that you understand intimately. You've cultivated client relationships that trust you. Starting over means rebuilding all of that from scratch. He was right, of course. 5 years of institutional knowledge wasn't easily replaced, but neither was the feeling of being consistently undervalued. I'll need some time to consider, I said finally. Of course, take the weekend, but I need an answer by Monday morning, he said, standing and signaling the end of our meeting. And Amelia, I'd appreciate if you could help stabilize the Ellison situation before you make any final decisions. I nodded. I'll handle Ellison personally today. When I returned to my desk, an email from Byron was already waiting, outlining the new position offer in writing. The salary figure made me blink twice. It was more than double what I currently earned. The job description could have been written specifically for my skill set. I was gathering materials for the Ellison call when Elaine appeared beside my desk, her expression carefully neutral. We need to talk, she said quietly. Not here. Lunch? I have the Ellison call at noon, I replied. After that, then my office at 2. I nodded, already turning my attention to the crisis at hand. The Ellison team was frustrated but relieved when I joined the call. Their demands were reasonable. They needed customizations that would normally take weeks implemented within days. I walked them through a phased approach that would prioritize their most critical needs while building toward their complete vision. This is exactly why we wanted to work with your company, their director said. You understand our business needs, not just technical specifications. After the call, I documented the solution in clear steps and sent it to the implementation team with explicit instructions. Normally, I would have handled every aspect myself, but today I delegated appropriately, making myself available for questions while not taking ownership of the execution. At 2 o'clock, I knocked on Elaine's door. She looked different, smaller somehow, dark circles under her eyes betraying a sleepless night. Close the door, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. I understand Byron offered you a new position. He did, I confirmed. She nodded slowly. I won't pretend to be happy about it, but I understand why he did it. You're valuable to the company. I waited, sensing there was more. I owe you an apology, she continued, the words seeming difficult. I've relied on your competence without properly acknowledging it or rewarding it. May I ask you something? I said, genuinely curious. When you said I wasn't qualified for senior management, what specifically did you think I was lacking? Elaine shifted uncomfortably. You've always been more technical, the behind-the-scenes problem solver. Senior management requires visibility, presence, political savvy. In other words, I do the work while others take the spotlight. She had the grace to look embarrassed. That's oversimplifying, is it? I asked. The Ellison contract. Who presented the winning strategy to the executive team? I did, and based on the proposal I developed the client retention initiative last quarter that saved 4 major accounts, who received the leadership award. That was a team effort, a team I led, coordinated, and created all materials for. I leaned forward slightly. I'm not lacking qualifications, Elaine. I've simply allowed others to stand on my shoulders while remaining invisible. The silence between us stretched uncomfortably. Are you taking Byron's offer? She finally asked. I haven't decided. If you stay, she said carefully, things will be different between us. Yes, I agreed. They will. The weekend gave me space to think clearly away from office politics. I took Elena to the Science Museum on Saturday, something I'd been promising for months but never made time for. On Sunday, I called my sister for advice. What does your gut tell you? She asked after I explained the situation. That I've outgrown the box they put me in, I replied. But I'm not sure if Byron's offer changes that or just makes the box more comfortable. Would you be reporting to Elaine in this new role? No, directly to Byron. And what happens to Elaine? It was a good question. Byron didn't say specifically, but reading between the lines, I suspected her position was being reconsidered. My sister was quiet for a moment. So your options are to take a fresh start elsewhere, or accept a promotion that might result in your former boss being demoted. Put that way, the choice felt different. I don't want revenge against Elaine, I said slowly. I just want recognition for my work. Are you sure about that? My sister challenged. The meeting will be set for Tuesday. That gives them 2 business days to panic. I couldn't help but smile. Perfect. That afternoon, I met with Caroline Winters, the trustee who had managed the shares since my father's passing. She was sharp, discreet, and had a memory like steel. I've watched that man dismantle your father's legacy brick by brick, she said, sliding a folder across her desk. You don't owe him politeness. Inside was everything I'd need for Tuesday: ownership certificates, voting records, and a detailed breakdown of company performance under Martin's leadership. Declining employee satisfaction, rising turnover, excessive spending on executive perks, and a flattening revenue curve despite a growing market. He's been hiding behind inflated projections, Caroline said flatly. If this continues, he'll drive the company into the ground within 2 years. I nodded, taking it all in. I'll let the numbers speak for themselves. As I left her office, I passed the mural in the hallway, an oil painting of my father standing in front of the first company headquarters. He looked younger than I ever remembered him, his hand resting on the shoulder of a small girl in a red dress, me. He believed in legacy and in people. And even though he wasn't here anymore, I could still feel his hand on my shoulder. By Monday morning, the buzz around my sudden disappearance had turned into full-blown rumors. Texts poured in from former colleagues. What happened? Did you quit? Martin's acting like nothing happened, but HR is strangely tight-lipped. Whatever you did, I hope you're okay. I didn't respond. Not yet. The silence was part of the plan. I wanted Martin comfortable, convinced he'd erased me from the story. Let him play king a little longer. Let him underestimate me one last time. That evening, I stood in front of my mirror, slipping into the navy suit I'd bought for special occasions but never worn. It was sharp, tailored, clean. The kind of outfit you wear when you walk into a room not to ask for power, but to claim it. I rehearsed what I'd say. Not a speech, just a few lines. Precise, measured, undeniable. The truth would do most of the work. Tuesday morning arrived crisp and cool. The city moved as it always did, unaware that inside one boardroom, everything was about to change. I arrived 10 minutes early, passing the receptionist with quiet confidence. She did a double take but didn't stop me. Upstairs, the boardroom lights were already on, movement visible through the frosted glass. Mr. Harrington met me by the elevators, his expression calm, unreadable. They're in there, he said. Martin's already talking. He thinks this is just another quarterly strategy review. Not for long. I took a slow breath, smoothed the front of my jacket, and stepped forward. The boardroom door opened with a soft click. Heads turned. Conversations died instantly. And Martin, mid-sentence, froze when he saw me. Elena, he said, brows lifting. This meeting is for board members only. I smiled politely and placed the ownership documents on the table. Exactly. Then I took my seat at the head of the table. The silence was total. Martin stared from the far end of the long oak table, confusion flickering into disbelief. I could almost see him trying to force me back into the box he thought he'd sealed shut last week. Elena, he said again, sharper now. This is a board meeting. As I mentioned, employees are not permitted. I'm not here as an employee, I replied calmly. I'm here as the majority shareholder. The energy in the room shifted instantly. Board members exchanged glances, some stiffening, others leaning forward. Mr. Dalton, who'd been with the company since my father's era, studied the document in front of him, then looked up at me. "Is this accurate?" he asked, adjusting his glasses. "It is," I said. 90% of the company's shares were transferred to me through a family trust when I turned 30. All paperwork is filed, notarized, and compliant with corporate governance. Martin snapped his gaze from me to Mr. Harrington, who calmly unfolded the ownership certificate and handed it to the board secretary. "You can't be serious," Martin scoffed, his voice rising. "This is ridiculous. Why would your father—" "Because he trusted me," I cut in. "And because he knew exactly what this company would become without oversight." The room went still again. Everyone understood what I meant, even without me saying it outright. Since my father's death, Martin had poisoned the culture, rewarding loyalty over competence, appearance over results, and the numbers had begun to reflect it. "Let's get to the point," I continued, opening the second folder. "As majority shareholder, I've called this special meeting to review current executive leadership, including the position of Chief Executive Officer." Martin stood, face flushed. "This is a coup. A personal vendetta. You think you can just walk in here?" "And I'm not asking," I said, raising my voice just enough to command the room. "I'm exercising my rights." I slid the financial report across the table. "Let's talk about performance." I didn't need drama. The numbers did the work. Employee satisfaction down 38% in 2 years. Turnover in key departments up 47%. 3 high-level discrimination complaints under active HR review. Flat revenue growth in a booming market. I've compiled testimony from department heads, employee surveys, and independent audits, I continued. I've also documented misuse of company funds, unauthorized travel, excessive executive bonuses, and misleading investor reports. I looked directly at Martin. "All signed off under your leadership." Pages flipped. Mr. Dalton looked genuinely disturbed. The CFO leaned toward the general counsel, who immediately began typing on his tablet. Martin's jaw tightened. "You're twisting data to make your little revenge fantasy look legitimate." "I don't need to twist anything," I said evenly. "I have evidence. You relied on the belief that no one powerful enough would ever question you. That belief ends today." I let the moment settle. "Effective immediately," I said, pulling out the final document. "I am submitting a motion to remove Martin Ree as CEO of this company. As majority shareholder, my vote alone carries the motion." The board secretary stared in shock. You don't need a second vote?" "I own 90%, I replied. "A majority by any definition." Mr. Dalton cleared his throat. "In accordance with company bylaws, the motion stands, effective upon completion of documentation." Martin slammed his hand on the table. "You can't do this." I met his eyes. I already did. Security didn't need to be called. Martin didn't resist. But as he stormed out, his face twisted with rage and disbelief, I noticed something striking. He didn't look powerful anymore. He looked small. When the door clicked shut behind him, I let out a slow breath and turned to the rest of the board. "This company deserves better," I said. "So do its people. And starting today, that's exactly what they're going to get." Mr. Dalton nodded slowly, a faint smile appearing. "Welcome back, Elena." By the end of the week, Martin's nameplate had been removed from the CEO's office door. I didn't move into the office right away. I didn't need the symbolism of a larger desk to validate my role. I had something far more important to do first: rebuild the soul of the company my father started. The Monday after the shareholders' meeting, I called an all-hands staff meeting in the main conference hall, the same room where Martin once paraded sales projections like war trophies and recycled hollow praise for the same few executives again and again. This time, the atmosphere was different. curious, cautious, hopeful. Employees filtered in slowly, whispering among themselves. The front rows stayed empty, as if no one wanted to appear too eager. Some faces looked nervous, others skeptical. They'd been burned before. I stood alone at the front, no notes, no slides, just the truth. Some of you know me, I began. Some of you only know what you've been told. But let me start with this. I didn't come here to take power. I came here to restore trust. Heads tilted. People leaned in. For years, this company ran on the strength of its people. Your ideas, your late nights, your belief that what we were building mattered. Somewhere along the way, that was lost. I paused, letting the silence do its work. I was fired last week, I said with a faint smile. Told I wasn't what this company needed, that I lacked the leadership to take us forward. A few nervous laughs rippled through the room, and the tension began to ease. Honesty was disarming them. I didn't fight back, I continued. Not then. Because I knew something Martin didn't. Leadership isn't about volume or vanity. It's about vision, respect, and lifting the people who actually do the work. I scanned the crowd, meeting the eyes of familiar faces. Engineers I'd worked beside for years, assistants who were always overlooked, junior analysts buried under layers of corporate ego. Starting today, everything changes. Over the next 2 weeks, I did something radical. I listened. I met with department heads, team leads, interns, receptionists, custodial staff. I asked what wasn't working. I asked what they needed. I asked who deserved more than they were getting. Then I acted. I promoted Maya from customer service to head of client experience, a role she'd already been doing unofficially for a year while her manager took credit. I brought back Kevin, a brilliant product developer who had quit after being repeatedly passed over in favor of less qualified men. I restructured HR completely. I read every complaint that had been collecting dust in forgotten folders.